Okay, we're going to start with chapter 37.
You haven't got the mic out, have you? Oh, okay.
I'm hiding it, Kathy.
Marty's going to lead us today.
I think.
Well, there aren't any hard names, so
No, there isn't. I'm just
it's
being
just
honest.
storytelling.
37.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had sojourned in the land of Canaan. These are the records of the generations of Jacob. Joseph, when 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was still a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah
Bilhah
and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a varicolored tunic. His brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and so they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream which I have had. For behold, we are binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf rose up, and also stood erect, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf." Then his brothers said to him, "Are you actually going to reign over us, or are you really going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Now he had still another dream, and related it to his brothers, and said, "Lo, I have had still another dream, and behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." He related it to his father and to his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have had? Shall I and your mother and your brothers actually come to bow ourselves down before you to the ground?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in the Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them." And he said to him, "I will go." Then he said to him, "Go now and see what the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me. So he sent him from valley to Hebron, and he came to Shechem.
Okay, let's pause there for just a minute. There's a moral to this story. If you have a dream like that, don't run and tell your brothers, who are already a little upset with him because Dad has showed him favoritism. Dad has taken this young man and made him a coat. And the coat, hi Sharon.
Hi.
The coat that he made him was really fancy. In fact, it became a wonderful musical on Broadway, The Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. But it unlike other coats, it had longer sleeves, and it went to the ground. And, coats, that's fancy dude wears a coat like that. And
My Bible points out that that's what Tamar wore when she was getting Judah to get her pregnant.
yes,
The very one?
Huh?
The very coat?
No, the same kind.
Oh, okay.
Same, like they were the same. Two different ones, but they were alike.
yeah. But you didn't get them at the Kmart. They were really good. So, but that last dream, did you notice did anything stand out to you in that last dream?
Well, it was the sun and the moon and 11 stars. That would be his father and his mother and his 11 brothers.
Yeah. So, when you see a number, you think, what does that mean? Well, there were 11 brothers. And, the moon, the sun, father, mother, and the brothers. And they all bowed down to him. If I were a brother, I think I would be a little upset, when you're trying to say you're going to rule over us. And, even though you got a great, amazing Technicolor coat, you're still the kid in the family. And it's another example of how the youngest child always gets treated with favoritism.
That's true.
I was the oldest. There was no favoritism for me. But in families that happens a lot.
Yeah.
So let's go on. He's going to take the flock and he's going to meet his brothers, and hopefully he doesn't tell them another dream.
A man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "I am looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are pasturing the flock." Then the man said, "They have moved from here, for I have heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. When they saw him from a distance, and before he came close to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Now then, come and let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits, and we will say, 'A wild beast devoured him.' Then let us see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard this and rescued him out of their hands and said, "Let us not take this life." Reuben further said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into the pit that is in the wilderness, but do not lay hands on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father." So it came about when Joseph reached his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the very varicolored tunic that was on him. And they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, without any water in it. Then they sat down to eat a meal. And as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites were coming from Gilead with their camels bearing aromatic gum and balm and myrrh on their way to bring them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it for us to kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then some Midianite traders passed by. So they pulled him up and lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. Thus they brought Joseph into Egypt.
Okay, let's stop there for a minute.
Catch my breath.
I'm I'm having some camera issues. When the camera comes around, it's only getting my chin. But it's not how I look that's important, it's what we say. Now, the part about this story that I really find fascinating is they have two groups coming down.
Mm-hmm.
The first group are the Ishmaelites. And remember, does that name sound familiar?
Ishmael was
Ishmael.
Abraham's actually first son.
Yes. And so here we have a relative coming by. The second group are the Midianites. They're really, remember, Midian.
Moses.
Well, Midian was one of the 6 children of Keturah. So it depends who's telling the story. Whoever was combining these stories, he was having just a terrible time. Because the Ishmaelites would mean one significance. The Midianites, that would have another significance. So
They're from one of them. They're from different storylines, aren't they?
yes.
One of them's from priest or Yahwist, and one of them's from Elohist.
Mm-hmm. And it just depends, whoever brought these stories all together. It's how they were trying to deal with it. So interestingly, we'll run across the Midianites again. Remember, Midian, the importance of Midian was Moses went up to the mountain and saw the flaming bush, and that question always haunted the Jews by saying, how can we know this is the same God? Well, Abraham had 6 sons with Keturah. One of them was Midian. So he must have taken the God of Israel when he moved to the area of Midian.
And they founded the Masons too, right?
Yes. And they wore those funny little hats, and they drive little cars or motorcycles around.
He went to Midian when he was fleeing from Egypt, and he was there 40 years.
Moses?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, he married
He married
a girl
her
from...
and had 2 sons, but he was there 40 years.
Yes, but when he left Egypt the first time, he went to Midian and married
Zipporah,
and whose father's flock he tended.
Rule.
Hmm?
Rule, or it's got another name.
Was it
Something with J, I can't think what it is.
Jethro? Or anyway.
Jethro, maybe, yeah.
So here, these stories, the amazing thing with Scripture and why it's hard when you read it is all of a sudden you've got a connection to something that happened previously. And in this chapter, we've got connections to 2 things that we previously studied. And so trying to get them straight in your mind is hard. It's kind of like that Palm Sunday reading when it says, Jesus sent a couple disciples out to get the donkey, and it said he rode in on a donkey and the foal of an ass. Well, it sounds like he came in with 2 horses, with a foot on each. Kind of like Charlton Heston coming in. Now, the other thing that steps out here that we don't want to overlook, they sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. Who else got 20 pieces of silver?
Judas. Judas got 30, didn't he?
Yeah, Judas got 30.
Inflation.
That's
You guys caught that, yes.
Okay.
So, here, even numbers, they sell the brother. And let's pick up from there, Marty. What, 29?
I was
29.
wondering about Reuben, he didn't really want to save his brother because he loved him. He wanted to save him to get taken back to the father and say, "I'm the one who saved him."
Yes.
Like, he was doing it for. Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay. I didn't want to know if I was reading it into it.
Now Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, so he tore his garments. He returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is not there. As for me, where am I to go?" So they took Joseph's tunic and slaughtered a male goat and dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the varicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it to see whether it is your son's tunic or not." Then he examined it and said, "It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." So Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. Then all his sons and all his daughters arose to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted. And he said, "Surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him in Egypt to
Potiphar.
Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard.
Okay. Now, this kind of gets a little interesting here because who brought him to Egypt?
The
The
Midianites.
Midianites. What happened to the Ishmaelites?
Yeah.
You know, it just,
They went a
that's not the way the story was told. And the father says, you know, I'll be lamenting this until I go down to Sheol. It says Sheol. No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. And Sheol is the place of the dead. It's not, heaven is not hell. Remember, the Jews at this time had no heaven or hell. So now we know that this poor young kid was sold to Potiphar, an officer of the Pharaoh, captain of the guard. So you would think when we go into chapter 38 that we would find out more about the story. But no. Chapter 38 is like a commercial in the middle of this story.
It's a different story in the middle.
It has nothing to do with Joseph. It's just there. And I'm thinking, who put this? Because we'll get to 39, and guess what? It starts off by saying, after Joseph had been taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelites. So maybe that chapter 38 is a break so we can figure out who in the hell actually took this kid. But it is kind of a nice story.
Well, it's not exactly a nice story.
Well,
Justice prevailed.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Do you want me to read the first 5 verses? Because there's a bunch of names in there.
If you'd like to.
What? Yeah. Why don't you read all of it? Because there may be some other names that'll pop up in there. And then-
Well, this name ER is going to come up.
yeah.
It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. Then Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. He took her and went in to her, and she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name She conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son, and called his name Shelah. Judah was in Cheziv when she bore him. And Judah took for took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. And we've had a Tamar before.
Yeah.
David's daughter that Absalom, no, not Absalom, the other one, the other A, raped. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her, and raise up offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not be his. So whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste the semen on the ground so as not to give offspring to his brother. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and he put him to death also. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, "Remain a widow in your father's house until Shelah my son grows up," for he feared that he would die like his brothers. So Tamar went and remained in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. Then Judah was comforted. When Judas was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And when Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, and she had not been given to him in marriage. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come in to you," for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. She said, "What will you give me that you may come in to me?" He answered, "I will give you a young goat from the flock." And she said, "If you give me a pledge until you send it." He said, "What pledge shall I give you?" She replied, "Your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand." So he gave them to her and went in to her, and she conceived by him. Then she arose and went away and took off her veil. Taking off her veil, she put on the garments of her widowhood. When Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adulamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was at Enaim at the roadside?" And they said, No cult prostitute has been here." So he returned to Judah and said, "I have not found her." Also the men of the place said, "No cult prostitute has been here." And Judah replied, "Let her keep the things as her own, or we will be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality." And Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." As she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law, "By the man to whom these belong, I am pregnant." And she said, "Please identify whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff." Then Judah identified them and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not know her again. When the time of her labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out with a scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was Zerah.
Which means bright. What's the significance of that story? I mean, it's just
in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
sidebar.
Yes. that really doesn't appear to add much to what's going on. And for all I know, these children, the twins, and you notice it's interesting. They think the one guy is coming out first. They put a ribbon around his arm. Then he pulled his arm back, and the other brother came out. But it's who is the firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this would be true in England or a lot of other countries, that the firstborn son inherits the kingdom. So, and of course, we know with the Jews, that firstborn son had an important role to play. And but God wasn't happy with these folks. I mean, He's striking a lot of people down, and
So some PhD did a doctoral thesis on study on this particular chapter?
yeah, I would bet there's more than one. And you know, they would do their thesis on the bright red ribbon, or someone would be, you know, why did Judah not send the third son in to try to impregnate? And
Well, it said because he was afraid he'd die.
yeah, because the other ones who slept with her died,
Mm-hmm.
and so but it's Kathy, in your translation, it refers to her as a temple,
A cult prostitute.
a cult prostitute,
And I have a footnote.
cult,
I have a footnote.
cult, CULT. That
I have a footnote that says sacred woman, a woman who served a pagan deity by prostitution.
yeah, Baal, you know,
Okay,
in their temple they had prostitutes,
got it.
and which I always thought, if we want to increase membership in our churches, there's a consideration.
You're being frowned on by somebody.
Oh, I'm just thinking what he said.
So,
Who
It
knows?
presents a problem or something to consider if you study like all the women of the Bible. Like Rahab lied, and Tamar did this, and yet I think they're both in the line of Christ genetically, and so you wonder what honorable thing they did while doing a dishonorable thing.
well,
There was some kind of mysterious justice in there.
What
that-
does it take?
Well,
What does it take to get
that kind of brings up,
It's just-
ye who are without sin, cast the first stone,
'Cause none of us are.
right? See, so that brought that up,
Yeah.
because it, you know,
but the men weren't a heck of a lot better, different. I mean, take a look at David.
Yeah.
I mean,
We'll take a look at Simeon and Levi
well, yeah, I mean, you can look at all of them. I mean,
and Rehoboam.
but you know, why do some get punished and others don't? And of course, David, he becomes the hero.
well, it's just like, well, they've been on this guy down at Ark City's walking around naked, and everybody's throwing a fit, and the sheriff's saying they can't do anything to him because there's no law against it, as long as it's not, he's not arousing somebody or he's not aroused, he can walk around naked.
Well,
So now they're putting in a law.
We can do that up in Methodist Convent.
What?
Come this warm summer weather, we can do that up in Methodist Convent.
Well, I think it's against the law around here.
Oh, okay, we're not in Ark City.
You can go to Ark City till they get the law in against nakedness. That they're starting to put a law in.
I sometimes wonder how we just have lost common sense.
That's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
Isn't he just old? I mean, is it that? Yeah, I mean,
He's an elderly man,
yeah.
but what? I mean, I'm kind of like the people. Why does he need? Can't he wear undershorts or cover it up? He can walk around naked every place, but just cover that part up and do your thing, you know.
I'm watching something, I don't know. And there's this one guy, he's a postman one time, and every year the postal department, they ask for what kind of uniforms and stuff you want. Well, this one guy, every time they come up there, is abbreviated pair of shorts. It's got no center to it. It's more like he's Irish or Scottish, and it's like a kilt. There's nothing there to support him. It's just kind of like a skirt.
He just wants it covered up.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
now back to chapter
Yeah.
39.
I just wanted to the Matthew genealogy says Abraham had Isaac, Isaac had Jacob, Jacob had Judah and his brothers, Judah had Perez and Zerah,
Oh,
the mother was Tamar. Perez had Hezron, Hezron had Aram, Aram had Abimelech.
Abimelech.
Yeah, no, it's Abimelech with a B.
That's what I said, Abimelech.
It ends with D-A-B.
Oh, Aminadab.
Yes, Aminadab. And on it goes. But that's Tamar is mentioned
yeah.
in the genealogy as the mother of. So,
It's a twins.
well, let's get into 39 and find out what happens to Joseph.
I guess I was just saying I was glad the chapter's in there.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I know that you think that Reuben was a bad guy, but I mean, maybe he really cared for Joseph.
Yeah.
That could be. Yeah. I wonder.
Well, he certainly didn't want to have him killed.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't think that was the answer.
Well,
Yeah.
how many pieces of silver?
That was that was Judah.
Okay.
Yeah, and sibling rivalry is a real thing, but that doesn't mean that once you got over being ticked off, you wouldn't go back and say, well, let's dig them out of the pit. All right, 39.
Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, had brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant, and he made him seer over his house, and all that he owned he put in his charge. It came about that from the time he made himself overseer in his house and over all that he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house on account of Joseph. Thus the Lord's blessings was upon all that he owned in the house and in the field. So he left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, and with him there he did not concern himself with anything except the food which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. It came about after these events that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, with me here my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns in my charge. There is no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. Now, how then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" As she spoke to Joseph day after day, he did not listen to her, to lie beside her or be with her. Now it happened one day that he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the household was there inside. She caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hands and fled, and went outside. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of her household and said to them, "See, he has brought in a Hebrew to us to make sport of us. He came in to me to lie with me, and I screamed. When he heard that I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled and went outside." So she left his garment beside her until his master came home. Then she spoke to him with these words, "The Hebrew slave whom you brought to us came in to me to make sport of me. And as I raised my voice and screamed, he left his garment beside me and fled outside." Now when his master heard these words of his wife, which she spoke to him, saying, "This is what your slave did to me," his anger burned. So Joseph's master took him and put him into the jail, the place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the jail. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. The chief jailer committed to Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made to prosper.
Okay,
That was the end of it.
that's the end of that chapter. And, it's interesting. If you're a man, you can have a wife, a second wife, a third wife, and the maid servants, the female servants. And it was no big deal. But women couldn't do that.
One husband.
One husband. And, adultery, having sex with somebody who's married, was a no-no. Now, we know that when Moses came down from the mountain with the Ten Commandments. Mm-hmm. But this was true in most cultures. Man could pretty much do what he wanted. Women couldn't. And if some man laid with a woman that was not his wife or his servant or offspring or whatever, that was bad. And you look at how women dealt with things. This story with Tamar. The two brothers slept with her. She had no kid. So since they wouldn't send the third brother, she takes off her mourning clothes and puts on a hooker outfit, and she seduces him and gets a goat out of it. Lot's children, his daughters. First one got him drunk, slept with him, tells her sister, get him drunk. She does it. So, women who are having, consider it be an adulterous relationship or an incestuous relationship, have to do it by being a conniving person. But men, look at, with Abraham, when Sarah couldn't give him a child, she says, take my maid. And the maid has a child, and Sarah then gets jealous because this kid is liable to be,
The heir.
pardon?
The heir.
Yes, the heir. So, and another example of being conniving was with Isaac and Esau. It was the mother who said to Isaac, go kill a ram.
It was Jacob. Go kill a lamb. Because Jacob took Esau's birthright
Yes,
and
yes,
blessing.
it was Jacob. Isaac was the father.
Yes, Isaac was the father.
So, that conniving happened because the mother said to do that. Now, I'm not implying that women are bad. I rather like women. But, it's difficult when we look at this double standard that existed in biblical times. But now we get the rest of this story of Joseph. Another example of a woman manipulating the narrative.
Yeah.
She's begging Joseph, please sleep with. Now, I love the way they describe Joseph. The Message says Joseph was strikingly handsome man.
Yeah.
He wasn't just. This guy could have been a centerfold. In that magazine, you used to have men as centerfold. So the wife wants him, and she's determined to get him. Well, she pestered him day after day after day, but he stood his ground. And then one of those days, she grabbed him. He says, I'm not doing so. She's got his cloak. He takes off, leaves the cloak behind. And so she goes to her husband and says, he tried to rape me.
And he gets put in jail.
He gets put in jail. But interesting, while he's in jail, this guy was obviously a good communicator and a very good administrator, because the jailer says the head jailer gave Joseph free rein, never even checked on him, because God was with him, and whatever he did, God made sure it worked out for the best.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Good wording.
Yes.
Well, it says the same thing when he was working for Potiphar. Everything went right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then Potiphar's wife
Manipulates the story.
manipulated him. But then in prison, the same thing happened. Everything goes right.
Yeah. And why does it go right?
Because he believed.
God is with him.
Mm-hmm.
God.
He doesn't deny God.
Well, and because God was with him, things work out. And that's kind of the message that we have even today through the New Testament. If God's with you, you might do something wrong, but God can make it right. God's power of forgiveness and understanding transcends human understanding. So we'll pick up with chapter 40 next time. And I want to point out that 39 started with saying Joseph had been taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelites.
Yeah.
And the other chapter ends by saying the Midianites.
Yeah.
I wonder how